The Oregon Trail was more than a route. It was a grueling test of endurance, resilience, and sheer willpower. Spanning over 2,000 miles of treacherous terrain, this iconic path became the ultimate gateway to the American dream of westward expansion. Yet for the pioneers who embarked on this journey, it was fraught with unimaginable danger and hardship. From deadly river crossings and relentless diseases to brutal weather and unexpected encounters, every step came at a cost. Join us as we uncover the perilous realities of life on the Oregon Trail and the incredible stories of survival and sacrifice. If you're fascinated by tales of the Old West and crave more untold stories, hit that subscribe button and saddle up for an unforgettable journey into the past. To enjoy such a trip, a man must be able to endure heat like a salamander, mud and water like a muskrat, dust like a toad, and labor like a jackass. He must learn to eat with his unwashed fingers, drink out of the same vessel as his mules, sleep on the ground when it rains, share his blanket with vermin, and have patience with mosquitoes. He must cease to think, except of where he may find grass and water and a good camping place. It is hardship without glory. Anonymous settler writing in the St. Joseph, Missouri Gazette. The Oregon Trail, stretching over 2,000 miles, has often been portrayed in 19th century accounts and later histories as a journey of opportunity and adventure. However, beneath the romanticized tales of pioneering spirit lies a far more sobering reality. This arduous route became the final resting place for many travelers, earning it the somber distinction of being one of the longest graveyards in American history. Historical estimates suggest that around 350,000 people set out on the trail between 1841 and 1869, driven by dreams of a better life in the West. Tragically, not all would see their destination. It is believed that as many as 30,000 individuals lost their lives along the way, translating to an average of 10 to 15 deaths for every mile of the trail. This startling figure underscores the profound risks inherent in such an undertaking during an era of limited medical knowledge, rudimentary transportation, and unpredictable environmental challenges. The primary threats to life on the Oregon Trail were not conflicts or violence, as some might assume, but rather the silent and persistent dangers of disease, accidents, and extreme weather conditions. Illnesses such as cholera, dysentery, and typhoid swept through wagon trains, often spreading rapidly due to the close quarters and shared water sources. Medical treatments of the time were limited, and many pioneers lacked access to the necessary resources or knowledge to combat these illnesses effectively. Accidents were another common cause of tragedy. Handling heavy wagons, livestock, and primitive tools in unfamiliar and often unforgiving terrain presented constant risks. Injuries could result from something as simple as a fall or a wagon mishap, and without proper medical care, could lead to long-term suffering or even death. Additionally, river crossings were particularly perilous, as settlers had to navigate unpredictable currents, shifting riverbeds, and the challenge of keeping their belongings dry and secure. Despite these hardships, many settlers persevered, driven by their determination to carve out a new life in the untamed West. The Oregon Trail stands as a testament to both the unyielding human spirit and the immense challenges faced by those who sought to fulfill their dreams of expansion and prosperity. Understanding this history helps us appreciate the complexity of their journey, far beyond the romanticized stories that have often overshadowed the realities of life on the trail. Disease and illness. The primary cause of fatalities on the Oregon Trail was disease and severe illness, overshadowing other dangers by a considerable margin. Historical accounts indicate that 9 out of 10 pioneers who fell ill on the trail succumbed to these ailments. This stark reality underscores how vulnerable travelers were due to a combination of harsh environmental conditions, limited resources, and the lack of medical knowledge. The demanding lifestyle on the trail, marked by exposure to extreme weather, an unvaried diet, and relentless physical exhaustion, weakened immune systems, making settlers more susceptible to illnesses. Infectious diseases such as cholera, dysentery, typhoid fever, tuberculosis, influenza, measles, and mumps frequently spread among wagon camps. The tight quarters of the wagons and the shared spaces within camps created an environment where diseases could easily pass from one individual to another, Sanitation challenges further exacerbated these health risks. Bathing and laundering were rare luxuries, often impossible due to time constraints or the scarcity of clean water. Drinking water was frequently contaminated by nearby human and animal waste, garbage, or decomposing animal carcasses. Cholera, a disease transmitted through tainted water, was the leading cause of death among pioneers. A healthy person could fall ill and deteriorate rapidly, with symptoms progressing so swiftly that their condition often became critical within hours. While some individuals endured prolonged suffering, many passed away within a single day due to the lack of effective treatment options. Cholera outbreaks were particularly devastating for wagon trains, with some groups losing more than half of their members during severe epidemic years. The lack of understanding about the disease's transmission further compounded the challenges as pioneers had no means to protect themselves or halt its spread. Other health issues also plagued the travelers. Poor food storage often led to contamination, especially among groups of single men who lacked the experience to properly preserve their provisions. Scurvy, a condition caused by vitamin C deficiency, became a significant problem as fresh fruits and vegetables were unavailable for long stretches of the journey. In addition, drinking water with high alkaline content, a common feature of certain Western regions, caused poisoning and contributed to further health complications. Childbirth posed additional risks on the trail, with both mothers and infants frequently facing life-threatening complications. The combination of poor nutrition, inadequate medical care, and the physically taxing nature of the journey made pregnancy and delivery exceptionally challenging. Infant mortality rates were high, and women giving birth often lacked access to basic support or sanitary conditions, further increasing the likelihood of tragic outcomes. The health challenges faced by pioneers on the Oregon Trail illustrate the immense difficulties of their journey. Far from the romanticized image of westward expansion, their experience was a testament to the perseverance required to endure such an unforgiving environment. These hardships remind us of the resilience of those who braved the trail in search of a better life. Accidents. Accidents on the Oregon Trail were unfortunately common and often stem from fatigue, inexperience, and the unpredictable nature of animals. The constant demands of the journey left pioneers physically and mentally exhausted, increasing the likelihood of mishaps. These incidents were further compounded by the challenges of managing wagons, livestock, and firearms under such arduous conditions. Wagon accidents were among the most frequent occurrences. The large, cumbersome wagons required careful handling, and both adults and children were at risk. Individuals could fall from a wagon due to uneven terrain or sudden movements, leading to injuries. In some cases, the wheels of the wagon caused harm when people accidentally ended up in their path. The relentless movement of the wagons across bumpy and rugged landscapes made these accidents a persistent danger. River crossings presented another significant hazard for pioneers, as fording rivers was often unavoidable along the trail. Swollen rivers, particularly after heavy rainfall, posed immense challenges. Deep and swift currents could overturn wagons, causing travelers to lose their supplies and equipment, which were crucial for their survival. Livestock, such as oxen or horses, sometimes panicked when navigating these waters, making crossings even more precarious. Notable rivers like the Kansas, North Platte, and Columbia claimed the lives of many emigrants who underestimated their strength or depth. The Green River in particular earned a reputation for being treacherous. In 1850 alone, at least 37 individuals are recorded to have drowned while attempting to cross this challenging stretch. Those who avoided water-related mishaps often encountered a different kind of challenge: financial exploitation. Enterprising ferrymen operated along these rivers, offering safe passage for a steep price. Charges for ferry services could range as high as $16, nearly the cost of an ox, making them a significant expense for families. One ferry alone reportedly earned an astonishing $65,000 in a single summer, sparking resentment among travelers, who felt they had little choice but to pay. As the years progressed, efforts were made to reduce the risks associated with river crossings. The construction of ferries, bridges, and rafts gradually improved safety and reliability along the trail. However, even these advancements were not foolproof. Improvised bridges sometimes proved unstable, and rafts could capsize due to shifting weight or strong currents, leading to unfortunate outcomes. The dangers associated with river crossings and wagon travel illustrate the complexities and unpredictability of the Oregon Trail. Pioneers faced not only physical challenges, but also the emotional and financial strain of navigating an environment that tested their resilience at every turn. These experiences underscore the immense determination required to complete the journey westward. Occasionally, alcohol contributed to the misfortunes on the Oregon Trail. A notable incident occurred on June 2nd, 1853, when a traveler under the influence miscalculated the depth and force of the rain-swollen Buffalo Creek. He drove his wagon into the water and vanished, a sobering reminder of how overconfidence and impaired judgment could lead to tragic outcomes. Firearms posed another significant risk to the safety of pioneers, ranking as the second leading cause of injuries and fatalities on the trail. The need to hunt for food and the ever-present fear of potential conflicts led settlers to arm themselves heavily. Some wagon trains carried an astonishing amount of firepower. For example, one 72-wagon caravan brought with it 260 firearms, nearly a ton of lead, and more than 1,000 pounds of gunpowder. However, most emigrants lacked experience in handling firearms safely, creating a high potential for accidents. Incidents involving guns were often unintentional but frequent. One of the earliest recorded casualties occurred on May 13th, 1841, when a pioneer named John Shotwell became an unfortunate symbol of this danger. While reaching for his rifle incorrectly, the weapon discharged unexpectedly, causing his death. Stories like these highlight the risks posed by inexperienced handling of firearms during such a challenging journey. The handling of domestic animals also brought its share of hazards. Oxen, horses, and mules, essential to the pioneers' progress, sometimes caused injuries when startled or agitated. Travelers could be thrown from their mounts, kicked, or even dragged by frightened or overworked animals. Stampeding livestock, often triggered by sudden noises or predators, occasionally created chaos in camp, leading to injuries or damage to supplies. Wild animals, although encountered less frequently, added another layer of risk. Pioneers who wandered alone were sometimes attacked by predators or bitten by insects and snakes, which posed their own health challenges. Buffalo herds also presented a unique danger to wagon trains. On rare occasions, these massive animals would overrun a camp, causing injuries, scattering livestock, and damaging wagons. The unpredictable nature of wildlife required pioneers to remain constantly vigilant, adding to the mental and physical exhaustion of the journey. Other injuries and accidents further underscored the perilous nature of the trail. Cuts, burns, and broken bones were common, given the demanding daily tasks required to maintain the caravan. Drowning incidents, particularly in the early 1850s before the construction of reliable ferries, were another persistent threat. Quicksand along riverbeds made crossings even more treacherous, as travelers had little understanding of how to navigate such hidden dangers. These accounts of accidents, whether involving firearms, animals, or natural hazards, provide a deeper understanding of the multifaceted challenges faced by pioneers. The journey westward demanded not only physical endurance, but also constant awareness and adaptability in the face of ever-present risks. Weather. The weather posed a formidable challenge for pioneers traveling the Oregon Trail, as its extremes tested their resilience in countless ways. Thunderstorms brought with them multiple hazards, including large hailstones, lightning strikes, and high winds. Hailstorms were particularly treacherous, with some stones reportedly reaching the size of apples, leading to injuries among travelers. Lightning strikes, though less frequent, claimed the lives of several pioneers and startled animals, adding to the dangers. Tornadoes and grass fires further underscored the unpredictability of prairie weather. Grass fires, often sparked by lightning or accidental campfires, could spread rapidly, leaving settlers scrambling to protect their belongings and livestock. High winds frequently worsened these fires, while also challenging the durability of wagons and tents. In the Rocky Mountains, pioneers faced an entirely different set of challenges as they encountered severe cold and snowstorms. Prolonged exposure to freezing temperatures often led to frostbite, and unprepared travelers risked grave outcomes. Many families struggled to stay warm, as their clothing and bedding were insufficient for the mountain climate. Snowstorms could also delay progress for days, increasing the strain on food supplies and morale. Conversely, the intense heat of the prairie plains during summer brought its own set of problems. Under the relentless sun, wooden wagon components would dry out and shrink. To prevent the iron rims of wagon wheels from detaching, settlers had to soak the wheels in rivers or streams overnight, an additional task that required both time and a reliable water source. This maintenance was essential for ensuring the wagons remained functional during the journey. Dust was another constant companion on the trail, particularly in drier regions. The trail's surface was often covered in a fine flour-like dust that could reach 2 or 3 inches deep. This dust filled the air, coating clothing, supplies, and skin. It irritated the eyes and lungs of both people and animals, creating discomfort that was nearly impossible to escape. Lips cracked and blistered in the dry conditions, and pioneers resorted to using axle grease as a makeshift remedy, a practical, albeit unorthodox solution born out of necessity. The relentless exposure to these harsh conditions took a toll on many immigrants, both physically and mentally. While pioneers took measures to adapt to the weather's challenges, the elements often proved to be an overwhelming force. Stories of perseverance amidst such adversity highlight the extraordinary determination required to survive the journey westward. American Indians. Interactions between American Indians and pioneers on the Oregon Trail were often more cooperative than confrontational, despite the prevailing fears and stereotypes of the time. While many immigrants viewed indigenous peoples with suspicion, assuming they posed a constant threat, historical evidence suggests that such concerns were frequently exaggerated. In reality, most encounters with Native Americans were peaceful and even helpful, demonstrating the adaptability and resourcefulness of both groups in navigating the challenges of the trail. Trade was the most common interaction between pioneers and Native Americans. Indigenous communities often exchanged goods that provided significant value to the travelers. Fresh food such as berries, game, or other provisions was highly prized for breaking the monotony of the immigrants' limited diet. Moccasins, crafted with expertise and well-suited for the rigors of the trail, were frequently swapped for worn-out boots or shoes. In return, pioneers offered items such as clothing, beads, or metal tools, which they had specifically brought along for trading purposes. These exchanges underscored a mutual understanding and practical collaboration. Beyond trade, indigenous assistance sometimes extended to more direct support. Before the construction of ferries and bridges by white settlers, Native Americans ingeniously crafted makeshift ferries, often using canoes to help transport wagons, animals, and travelers across dangerous rivers. This critical aid saved many pioneers from potential disaster during river crossings, particularly in areas where the water was swift or treacherous. However, despite these positive interactions, the narratives of hostility persisted and were often magnified. Stories of violent encounters, while relatively rare, received outsized attention in newspapers and journals, creating an enduring image of the trail as a battleground. A few highly publicized massacres contributed to this fear, overshadowing the far more common experiences of peaceful coexistence. The immigrants themselves sometimes fueled tensions through their actions. Some settlers, driven by fear or prejudice, acted impulsively. Reports of pioneers using Native Americans as targets for shooting practice reveal how fear and misunderstanding could escalate into unnecessary conflict. These incidents not only caused harm, but also eroded trust between the two groups, making subsequent interactions more strained. The dynamics between indigenous peoples and pioneers on the trail highlight the complexity of their relationships. While fear and conflict often dominated the historical narrative, the reality was far more nuanced. Cooperation, trade, and shared survival strategies were frequent and critical elements of the journey westward. Such moments of collaboration remind us that the history of the Oregon Trail is not only one of hardship, but also one of cross-cultural exchanges that shaped the experience for everyone involved. Crime and punishment. The extreme conditions on the Oregon Trail pushed immigrants to their physical and emotional limits. Yet historical evidence suggests that acts of crime among travelers were relatively rare. This resilience was remarkable given the lack of formal legal systems. There were no established civil laws, law enforcement officers, or courts to safeguard those undertaking the journey across the plains. Military forces stationed near forts provided some degree of security, but their reach and influence were limited. Consequently, wagon trains had to develop their own methods of maintaining order and justice to ensure group survival. One of the earliest tasks for many wagon trains, even before departing Missouri, was to create a constitution or a set of rules that outlined expected conduct and addressed potential disputes. These agreements often reflected the legal norms and moral values of the communities the emigrants had left behind. For minor offenses, mediation and discussion were typically sufficient to resolve conflicts. However, serious crimes such as theft of horses, acts of violence, or taking a life demanded more structured processes. In cases of major infractions, travelers relied on a community-driven judicial process. Members of the wagon train would collectively select a judge and jury from among their ranks to preside over a trial. These proceedings adhered to familiar standards of justice, ensuring a sense of fairness despite the challenging circumstances. Punishments for severe offenses ranged from expulsion from the group to capital sentences, such as hanging, which were intended to deter future crimes and protect the broader community. Though shootings and violent disputes did occur, they were not as prevalent as one might imagine given the conditions. Historical records estimate that nearly 200 individuals were killed in homicides along the Oregon-California Trail during the mid-19th century. These numbers underscore the relative rarity of such incidents compared to the sheer number of travelers who undertook the journey. Nonetheless, the lack of a formal legal structure likely contributed to some unresolved conflicts and tragedies. One documented case highlights the personal nature of many disputes. Ephraim Brown, a prominent figure on a wagon train bound for California, became one of the few trail victims whose burial site is known. In 1857, near South Pass, Wyoming, Brown was killed during a family disagreement, illustrating how tensions within tightly knit groups could escalate under the pressures of the journey. These self-governed justice systems reflected the adaptability and resourcefulness of emigrants on the trail. By relying on shared values and collective decision-making, they managed to create order in an environment fraught with uncertainty. The story of crime and justice on the trail reveals the complexities of life in the wilderness, where survival often depended as much on cooperation as on individual fortitude. Other deaths. Hunger was a constant threat on the Oregon Trail, though it claimed the lives of draft animals more frequently than the emigrants themselves. For humans, starvation was a tragic reality in extreme cases, as seen in the harrowing story of the Donner Reed Party of 1846. Caught by an early snowstorm in the Sierra Nevada, their supplies ran out, and 35 of the group perished. The remaining 47 survivors resorted to desperate measures to stay alive, which remain one of the most infamous episodes in westward migration history. The experience of such hardships highlights the fragile balance between preparation and the unpredictable forces of nature. The stresses of the journey often weighed heavily on the pioneers. Physical illness, emotional exhaustion, and relentless challenges sometimes led individuals to despair. While rare, suicides were not entirely unheard of under the immense psychological strain. Accidents of varying kinds added to the dangers. Falling objects, sharp tools, and mishaps during activities such as buffalo hunting frequently resulted in injuries or fatalities. The environment, coupled with the rigorous pace of travel, left little room for error. Children were especially vulnerable to becoming separated from their wagon trains. Drawn by curiosity, they sometimes wandered off to collect flowers, berries, or simply explore the landscape. While many found their way back to their families, some did not return. This could lead to heartbreaking uncertainty, with fears that they may have succumbed to natural hazards or other unforeseen circumstances. Such events underscored the importance of vigilance, particularly in a setting where even momentary inattention could lead to tragedy. Despite the inherent dangers, travelers often looked out for one another by leaving messages for those following behind. These warnings could be about outbreaks of illness, poor quality drinking water, or areas where tensions with local indigenous groups might pose a risk. This sense of shared responsibility fostered a fragile but critical sense of community along the trail. Over time, improvements along the route reduced many of these risks. Ferries and bridges made water crossings far less hazardous, sparing travelers from the earlier perils of fording rivers. Supply stations and settlements began to appear along the trail, offering opportunities to rest, repair wagons, resupply, and even trade with indigenous communities. These posts became lifelines for weary emigrants, allowing them to regroup and prepare for the next leg of their journey. Another significant development was the publication of guidebooks written by experienced travelers. These books provided essential information about the route, helping settlers navigate without needing to hire escorts for protection or guidance. However, not all guidebooks were created equal. Some contain inaccuracies that misled settlers, causing them to lose their way or miscalculate their supply needs. This highlights the importance of reliable information in a time when survival often hinged on careful planning and adaptability. Other difficulties. The journey along the Oregon Trail was marked by immense challenges and persistent hardships, testing the endurance and resilience of even the most determined pioneers. While the physical dangers of the trek are well documented, the emotional and psychological toll also weighed heavily on those heading west. The very act of departure was one of the first hardships many travelers faced. Leaving behind loved ones, lifelong friends, and the familiarity of home often brought heartache. Many emigrants knew that their goodbyes were likely permanent, as the distances and difficulties of communication at the time made reunions improbable. Practical challenges began even before setting off. Packing for the journey required families to make difficult decisions. Each covered wagon offered only about 80 square feet of space to carry all their belongings, food, and tools for the 2,000-mile journey. Beloved keepsakes and heirlooms, often tied to family history, were left behind to prioritize essentials. Yet even the most carefully chosen items would later be sacrificed. As the trail became steeper, particularly after Fort Laramie, where the ascent into the Rocky Mountains began, the overburdened oxen and other draft animals struggled. To spare them, travelers had to jettison items they had once considered treasures. The trail became a scattered museum of discarded goods, each telling a silent story of sacrifice and necessity. The physical demands of the journey were relentless. With wagons overloaded, nearly everyone, including women and children, walked alongside the vehicles. Many traveled barefoot, enduring rugged terrain and extreme weather conditions. The daily grind, covering an average of 15 miles, led to widespread exhaustion and weakened bodies. Food supplies often proved insufficient, as many emigrants underestimated how much they would need. Rationing became a grim reality for some, as was the case for the Whitman Party in 1836, who survived on dried buffalo meat when provisions ran low. Spare parts for wagons and additional clothing were also in short supply, leaving little room for error or accidents along the way. Monotony added another layer of hardship, particularly during the 427-mile stretch across Nebraska. The unchanging landscape, marked by endless plains and repetitive scenery, became a source of frustration and mental fatigue. One early pioneer famously remarked that, after spending 30 days traversing Nebraska with no variety in the view, he almost wished for a Native American attack just to break the monotony. Such sentiments highlight the emotional strain of the journey as the pioneers grappled with the isolation and repetitive nature of their trek. After the long, flat expanse of Nebraska, the site of natural landmarks like Courthouse Rock, Chimney Rock, and Scotts Bluff lifted the spirits of weary travelers. These landmarks, visible for miles, served as symbols of progress and provided a psychological boost, reminding pioneers that they were inching closer to their destination. Go-backs. The journey along the Oregon Trail was daunting, and the immense challenges posed by the landscape, weather, and isolation led about 1 in 10 emigrants to abandon the trip altogether. These individuals, known as go-backs or turnarounds, turned back for various reasons, and their experiences highlight the hardships faced by those daring to cross the frontier. Some go-backs turned around almost immediately, never traveling far beyond the Missouri River, where the realities of the journey quickly became apparent. The costs associated with the expedition often proved prohibitive for families, and unsettling stories about the dangers of the trail, told by those returning or passing through, made some reconsider the decision to continue. These early dropouts represented a fraction of those who never fully committed to the arduous trek west. Others ventured further into the journey, only to be defeated by the harsh realities of the trail. Mary Ellen Todd, who left Arkansas for Oregon in 1852, observed that of the 100 wagons that initially set out, 96 turned back after covering a significant portion of the trail. The emotional toll, physical exhaustion, and difficulties encountered along the way led many to reconsider their goal, especially after losing valuable resources or facing unexpected challenges. The 1850 season alone saw a number of wagon trains forced to turn back due to a combination of factors. Seth Llewellyn, a pioneer traveling the trail, recalled meeting a caravan of 300 wagons retreating from St. Joseph, Missouri. This group had been ill-prepared with insufficient provisions to complete the journey. Additionally, a severe drought and high traffic that year exacerbated the challenges, leading several wagon trains to retreat for fear of running out of supplies. The go-backs were not solely confined to the early stages of the trail. In 1852, Ezra and Eliza Jane Meeker, traveling westward, encountered 11 wagons traveling eastward against the flow of traffic. These wagons, driven by women who had lost their male family members, had made it as far as Fort Laramie in Wyoming before turning back. Their return was driven by the need to regain some semblance of stability and to find their way home in the East after enduring losses and hardships that had left them without the resources to continue. Even though the difficulties of the Oregon Trail led many to give up, for most emigrants, the decision to move west was one they never truly regretted. The sense of adventure, the promise of a new life, and the hope for prosperity kept most pioneers determined to push forward, despite the many setbacks. The Oregon Trail was more than just a path to a new life. It was a test of endurance, courage, and survival. From diseases and dangerous wildlife to the harshest of weather conditions, the Oregon Trail challenged every settler who dared to make the journey. But despite all the obstacles, their story is one of resilience and determination. If you enjoyed uncovering the brutal truths behind the Oregon Trail, make sure to hit the subscribe button for more fascinating insights into the American Old West. There's so much more to explore, and we can't wait to share it with you.